I was sitting there, I'm a freshman, I don't know anything. And he comes in, he sits down, and we go through the syllabus, and he raises his hand and asks the professor, are we gonna talk about the Mormons, like with all of this like disgust? And so, announcement to the entire university, I am Mormon. And I just sank in my chair. I had no idea how to engage with that, what to do, but I had confidence and faith that my professor would. And her response was, oh, we're not going to talk about the Mormons because that's not a real religion.
Hello everybody, my name is Elmira Darmanian and you're watching In Frame. Today I have the honor of speaking with Dr. Jessica Spence-Moss, the new Assistant Director of the Interfaith program here at Long Beach State Office of Belonging and Inclusion. Dr. Moss is a sociologist and interfaith educator. In addition to her role at CSULB, Dr. Moss has also served as the Interfaith Director at USC and Interfaith Faculty Fellow at CSU Fullerton. She is also the Executive Director of the Interfaith Youth Alliance. Without further ado, Dr. Moss, welcome to our show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
It's a big pleasure to speak to you today. So my first question is going to be, as the new Assistant Director of the Interfaith program at CSULB, would you please be able to introduce everyone the concept of the interfaith?
Yes. So interfaith, at the very basic definition, is an engagement with difference, specifically religious difference. But for interfaith programs, we're expanding that to be religious, spiritual, and ethical identities, and engaging with those on campus.
That is very interesting. So what is the mission of the Interfaith program and why do you believe it matters at CSULB?
For interfaith programs, our mission is to create these spaces on campus in which students and faculty and staff can engage with this difference in productive ways, to cultivate for themselves what religion, spirituality, ethics, morals means to them, engage with people that are different from them, and do something productive on campus. I'm really grateful that this position exists in the Office of Belonging and Inclusion because it brings the identity of religion, spirituality, ethics into the DEI conversation, and it creates these spaces.
How do you envision the Interfaith program evolving on campus now that we have it, and what activities or resources will it offer to our students?
So it's brand new. Like, this is the first semester. I am the first person. So whatever it evolves to, I don't know. I have dreams. My goal is to engage and get interfaith, religion, spirituality conversations in any space I can. So something like this, a media project, getting involved with different academic departments on campus, doing service projects with students, having conversations about the complexity of religious identity, because it's not always sunshine and rainbows, and we have difficult things that we need to deal with when it comes to our personal religious identities as well as identities that other people have that are challenging for us.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Given your extensive experience, because I've mentioned that you have experience at CSUF, USU, and you work with youth as well, and also like interfaith education and promoting interfaith conversations, can you share any stories from your experience that maybe personally stood out to you?
Yeah, so I'm gonna share a story. It's a personal story that I think is kind of like an origin story for me. So when I was in college, my freshman year, I took a world religions class as a GE. So GEs are important, everyone. It will potentially give you your future career. And so it was a world religions class, and this is kind of, it's a little traumatic. There was a person that came in, this was post-Columbine. I know not everyone knows about that, but there was a guy that came in and he had I vividly remember a belt made of bullet casings. And I was sitting there, I'm a freshman, I don't know anything. And he comes in, he sits down, and we go through the syllabus, and he raises his hand and asks the professor, are we gonna talk about the Mormons, like with all of this like disgust? And so announcement to the entire university, I am Mormon. And I just sank in my chair. I had no idea how to engage with that, what to do, but I had confidence and faith that my professor would. And her response was, oh, we're not going to talk about the Mormons because that's not a real religion. And I sank even more. And at the time, this is 20 years ago, I had no context of how to deal with that. I didn't know what to do. I just sat through the rest of the class, through the rest of the semester, and I just thought, okay, people don't like me. And as I went on and did my master's research and my PhD dissertation on interfaith communities and engaging with religious difference, I know I'm not alone in having an experience like that. Our Jewish classmates, our Muslim classmates, Baha'i, Zoroastrians, like there's a ton of communities that experience that to greater and lesser degrees. And so for me, even though I didn't know it then, it was kind of the seed that like, I have to do something that no student ever feels like I did, even in the smallest way. Moving forward at Cal State Fullerton, actually, I did a training for the RAs, the resident assistants in housing. And I invited everyone, if they wanted, to share what their religious, spiritual, or ethical identities were. There was about 28, 30 students in this group, and they self-selected to be in this training. And about 23 of them were identified as atheist, secular, raised religious, no longer religious. It's complicated, all of the things. But it was a majority of them. There were only a handful that said, oh, I'm this or I'm that. And what that showed me is that college students specifically care about religion and spirituality and ethics and morals and justice and all of these things. There's just not really a space that allows them to have those conversations and ask hard questions without feeling maybe if they're in a religious community and they ask hard questions, maybe they're told don't talk about that. Or if they're in like a secular space, like a state university, they're told, oh, no, that's religion, separation of church and state. We can't talk about that. So they don't have a space to have those conversations, but I'm hoping having interfaith programs here gives us those spaces.
Yeah, I'm definitely sorry to hear about your experience back in college, but I'm so glad that you have the power to bring the change.
Yeah, thank you.
So back to the questions.
Yeah.
Your USC bio mentions that you're also the executive director of the Interfaith Youth Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to work in youth interfaith education, and why do you think educating our youth about interfaith pluralism is important?
So I mean, this is a great question, and it builds off of the last one. When I was in college, when I was doing my master's research, I had a minor in religion, and I was a young college student. So all I knew was what the data showed me and what my professors told me, right? And so what I heard and what I was learning was religion is declining, at least based on standard metrics. The religious leaders were freaking out about it. No one's showing up to church on Sunday. And the more I engage with people in my own generation, I'm a millennial, I see that it's not that we're like rejecting religion, it's that we have a lot of information at our fingertips. We're way more connected to social justice issues. We're willing to call out things and reject the status quo. And so while religious leaders or scholars want to say things like, oh, these young kids are lazy, or they just want to sin, or they don't care, I think it's actually that they do care, but they don't have a space to have these difficult conversations. They see hypocrisy in a lot of religious spaces. They know that religious values and spiritual values and ethics and morals are important, and that they can learn those in community. In these religious communities, but what is preached and what is actually done are very different things. So for me, interfaith, working with youth specifically, high school students and college students, it gives me hope that we can have hard conversations. And it doesn't mean that we have to reject religion altogether. It also doesn't mean that we have to accept everything either. We can find our own space and feel connected to community, feel connected with other people that also have strong spiritual, moral, ethical beliefs. And some of them might be different from ours, and we're okay with that. So that's why I do it.
Yes, that's very interesting, especially the way you described how kind of everyone can have their personal way with religion when it comes to you don't have to fully accept it or you don't have to fully reject it. That's definitely a way, maybe some people are actually searching for it. In a time marked by conflicts, both locally and globally, all over the world, in what ways can interfaith education help our students navigate challenges related to cross-faith interactions and conversations?
Okay, this is a really hard question, and I do not have an answer, but I have a lot of thoughts. I've said this to a couple of different groups because I get this question often. And so my thoughts are what I call an interfaith ethic, like learning the skills of interfaith dialogue. First and foremost, like communication skills in general are beneficial for all people to learn,
Definitely.
right? But then learning those skills in a specific context of talking about religion and spirituality and ethics and morals is really important. The other thing that we don't talk enough about is the challenge that intra-faith relationships bring to this conversation. A lot of times, especially the post 9/11 world, which is how I got engaged with interfaith, is okay, we just need to get these two supposedly conflicting groups, we just need to get them to talk to each other. But especially in today's world, we're seeing it's not just these two conflicting groups, it's within certain groups, there's a lot of tension. We're not being Christian the right way, we're not being Jewish the right way, we're not being Muslim the right way. And so before we can even have a conversation across the differences that are supposedly large, like a cross-religious difference, I think we need to learn how to have conversations within our own communities as well, that we're all trying our best to live out our values and our morals, and those might look different, and sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's us being better, and so if we can learn the skill, that translates to being just a better citizen, just being a better person in humanity.
Yes, definitely. I love how you brought it up, the fact that some religions can't even coexist within themselves. I feel like there's a lot of judgment sometimes coming from your own kind, if that makes sense. So it's definitely important to have communication skills regardless of who you are, where you are, just to be an overall good person. What advice do you have for students looking to foster interfaith dialogues in their lives?
So this is a great question that I love so much because I get to talk about my dissertation. So in my dissertation, one of the things that I kind of came up with and through a lot of research and a lot of conversations, that in order to cultivate this interfaith ethic that I call it, we need to cultivate within ourselves like 3 core characteristics. We need to be authentic first and foremost. We need to be curious about the other, but also curious about ourselves. And lastly, we need to build the ability to be hospitable. And every religious tradition, every ethical structure has some concept of hospitality, like welcoming people into your home. Some communities are really good at it, right? Some communities, like you go in and you go to your friend's house and like you're not allowed to leave until like the mom shares like the entire meal with you, right? So that hospitality, but for me, and more than authenticity, I think like college students are getting really good at being authentic, and I think they're getting pretty good at like allowing others to be authentic too. We're pretty curious, we're in college, we're taking our GEs, we're expanding our visions, right? But that hospitality piece, it's not just about creating a space that other people feel welcomed in. It's also so it's not this hierarchy of I have the space and I'm allowing you into this space. It's also, I'm going to be a guest and I'm going to enter a space and I'm going to be okay with being uncomfortable. I'm going to be okay with not everything being like bent to my will. And I think that that is key. If we get comfortable with being uncomfortable, recognizing we're going to go into spaces and it's not going to feel good, but the goal is to build relationships, to understand difference. That will really, I think, change the way we engage with each other and make this world a better place.
That is definitely an amazing piece of advice. Thank you so much. It means a lot to hear words like that. Well, that about does it for our show. Thank you so much to Dr. Moss for coming here and sharing your stories and insights on Interfaith. And thank you, the viewers, for sticking around and watching. I'm Elmira Darmanian, and this has been In Frame with Dr. Jessica Spence Moss. We'll see you next time.